Hello again. Well, after a couple of months, I'm finally back with another build video. I'd hoped to get a couple of videos out long before this, but a couple of the shop upgrades took much longer than expected. This video covers the build of a fairly simple outfeed and assembly table to go with my new table saw. The table's built from construction grade 2x4s with an MDF top. I'm using MDF here simply because I had this piece on hand and I didn't want to spend the extra money to buy something else. The shop's still in quite a bit of a mess. I'm still rearranging and trying to get too much equipment into too small of a space. So please forgive the mess in the videos. I picked out the best 2x4s that my local hardware store had, but these were fairly rough condition. So I had to go through and run them all through the jointer, screwing up two of the sides, and then I ran them through the planer and brought them down to their final dimensions of 3 1/4 inches wide by 1 1/4 inches thick. I had left everything a little bit long in case there was any sniping as I ran them through the jointer or the planer. So now I'm going through and cutting everything to the correct length on the table saw. And so now it's time to do some assembly. Here I'm making one of the legs. As you can see, I drew a line down the length of the 2x4 to mark where to pre-drill the pilot holes. After this, I go through and use a little bit of glue and some screws to assemble the leg. In this particular one, I did not use clamps, which in hindsight was a mistake. Everything wanted to slide around and was generally a real pain. So the ones I did after this were all done with clamps. I'm using 2-inch drywall screws for the assembly here. They were used throughout the build with the exception of the pocket holes, in which I used the 2-inch Craig pocket hole screws. Before drilling the pocket holes, I needed to adjust the stock collar on the pocket hole drill bit. I set the depth to 1 1/4 inches to match the thickness of the boards. I attached the top end rail to both legs using glue and the pocket holes that I had drilled earlier. After attaching the top end rails, I then attached the bottom stretchers using glue and pocket hole screws. And I repeated the process to create the opposite end of the table. After the two end units were completed, I stood them on their sides and installed the top side rails and side stretchers. And I flipped everything over and repeated the process for the other side. Since I didn't want to rely solely on the strength of the pocket hole joints, I added a second layer to the end rails and the end stretchers. The hex shank decided to separate from my countersink bit. Installing that second layer on the lower end stretchers. I forgot to press record while I was putting the MDF on top of the wood frame, but I did not glue the MDF to the frame. I'm simply installing it with countersunk screws. That way, if it gets damaged in the future, it's an easy replacement. And the table's pretty much done here. I still need to get plywood or MDF for the bottom shelf, and I need to route miter slots in the top to match up with the miter slots in my table saw. Hopefully now that my workshop is not in total disarray, I can get these videos out a little more frequently. Until then, thank you everybody who has subscribed and left comments on my videos, and I'll see you all again soon.